In spite of the fact that many cultures celebrate a wide variety of holidays, Christmas is the most well-known and widely celebrated worldwide. However, Christmas would not be the same without the jovial, white-bearded Santa Claus, who travels the world in a single night using a miraculous sleigh pulled by 8 flying reindeer to bring toys to children living in every household. This is at least what kids all across the world think. But have you ever stopped to consider what makes Santa Claus so special? Why do children get presents from Santa Claus on Christmas? And perhaps most importantly, who exactly is the real Santa Claus? Don't you worry, because we got you covered. In today's video, we'll discuss the origins of Santa Claus and all the events that led up to it. Santa Claus is the English equivalent of the Dutch name for Saint Nicholas, who was a godly man noted for his kindness and charity. In Dutch, he is called Sinterklaas. Nicholas was most likely born at Patara, which is located in Asia Minor, in the year AD 280, according to the most reliable estimates. Later in life, he assumed the role of Bishop of Myra, which is located in what is now Turkey. Nicholas had affluent Christian parents who gave him a good start in life. It is believed that Nicholas's parents were devoted believers who had prayed for a child for a very long time before they finally had Nicholas. When Nicholas was finally born, they devoted him to God. He was raised with an abundance of love and particular focus due to the fact that he was an only child. Sadly, Nicholas lost both of his parents when he was still a young boy, probably a teenager, as a result of the disease that swept through his city. Even though this kind of tragedy could cause some people to turn their backs on God, it seems to have had the opposite effect on Nicholas. The boy's heart seemed to have become more sensitive to the pain of others as a direct result of the death of his parents. Nicholas received a sizable fortune and made the decision that he would use it to serve as an act of worship to God. It is an indicator that he must have shown knowledge and maturity beyond his years, since he was chosen as the Archbishop of Myra when he was still in his early 20s, which is a harbor city just south and east of Patara. He gained such a solid reputation in his region that he was picked to serve in that role. One of the most famous stories about St. Nicholas is the one about the time he provided a dowry for 3 impoverished sisters so that they might get married, preventing their father from selling them into slavery or forcing them to work as prostitutes. Over the course of many years, Nicholas's reputation grew, and he became recognized as the guardian of children and men. On December 6th, the date that marks the anniversary of the saint's passing, his feast day is observed. This day had a long history of being recognized as a particularly auspicious occasion for major financial transactions and weddings. By the time of the Renaissance, St. Nicholas had become the most well-known saint across Europe, even after the Protestant Reformation. When the worship of saints began to be discouraged, St. Nicholas continued to maintain a favorable reputation, particularly in Holland. In Middle Age art, St. Nicholas was typically depicted as a tall, thin, bearded cleric. So how did he develop into the Santa that people in America know and love today? The white beard and red suit worn by Santa Claus are, in reality, fairly reminiscent of the bishop's robes that are traditionally worn by Sinterklaas, the Dutch version of Santa Claus. However, the chubby and fat aspect of Santa Claus in the United States can be mainly traced back to the poem "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," which was written in the 19th century. This was an attempt to establish a more friendlier picture of Santa and to reassure youngsters that they had nothing to dread, as the poem puts it. Even though the modern Santa Claus has become a secularized character surrounded by imagination, the image of the genuine St. Nicholas, a man who committed his life to serving God and encouraged others to do the same, can serve to help us recall the true Santa Claus. At the tail end of the 18th century, St. Nicholas made his initial journey into the popular culture of the United States of America. It was stated in a newspaper published in New York in December 1773 and again in 1774 that on the anniversary of his passing, groups of Dutch families had gotten together to commemorate the event. Santa Claus is derived from Nick's Dutch name, Sinterklaas, which is a shortened form of the name St. Nicholas. At the annual meeting of the New York Historical Society in 1804, a man named John Pintard, who was a member of the society, handed out woodcuts of St. Nicholas. The background of the engraving features representations of Santa that are now commonplace, such as stockings stuffed with toys and fruit that is hung over a fireplace. When Washington Irving wrote his book, The History of New York, in 1809, he referred to St. Nicholas as the patron saint of New York City. This served to popularize the traditions of Sinterklaas and contributed to the book's success. The giving of gifts became a tradition for Christians to observe on December 6th. The feast day of St. Nicholas, in honor of the saint's reputation as a generous person. The custom evolved over the course of time. For good boys and girls, St. Nicholas would come in his red bishop's robe and fill boots with gifts on the night of December 5th. For bad boys and girls, St. Nicholas was to be feared. St. Nicholas came to be used as a form of child discipline in regions of Europe that had strong Catholic tradition. In Germany, he was frequently accompanied by Knecht Ruprecht, also known as farmhand Rupert, who yelled at unruly youngsters and threatened to eat them. In Switzerland, St. Nicholas was said to have warned naughty children that he would put them in a bag and send them back to the Black Forest. In the Netherlands, St. Nicholas's helper would tie them to a sack and bring them back to Spain. In some regions of Austria, a priest decked out in Christmas attire would go door to door over the holiday season and threaten misbehaving youngsters with the use of rod bearings. As far as can be determined, St. Nicholas died on or around December 6, 343. Though he is thought of mainly as the jolly man in red who brings toys to good girls and boys on Christmas Eve. The story of Santa Claus is a prime example of generosity and kindness. What do you think? Post your answers in the comments section below.